The 8,398th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in Somalia. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Djibouti, Eritrea, and Somalia to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of Item 2 of the agenda. Members of the Council have before them document S/2018-1010, the text of a draft resolution submitted by the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I wish to draw the attention of the Council members to document S/2018 of 1002, a letter dated 7 November 2018 from the Chair of the Security Council Committee pursuant to Resolution 751 of 1992 and 1907 of 2009 concerning Somalia and Eritrea, addressed to the President of the Security Council. I wish to also draw the attention of the Council members to document S/2018-1003, a letter dated 7 November 2018 from the Chair of the Security Council Committee pursuant to Resolutions 751 of 1992 and 1907 of 2009 concerning Somalia and Eritrea, addressed to the President of the Security Council. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2018-1010 please raise their hand? The result of the voting as follows. The draft resolution received 15 votes in favor. The draft resolution has been adopted unanimously as Resolution 2444 of 2018. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements before the vote. I first give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. Welcome to our colleagues from Djibouti, Eritrea and Somalia. I'd like to thank Council members for their unanimous support for this resolution. It lifts sanctions on Eritrea. It sets out the Council's continued support for efforts to improve peace and security in Somalia. The agreement to lift sanctions on Eritrea recognises the improvements in regional peace and security and the positive steps Eritrea has taken to meet the demands of the Security Council. And it is right that in the light of such developments, we reconsider the measures. It is also right that we continue to urge dialogue between Eritrea and Djibouti on the Djiboutian combatants missing in action and on the resolution of their border dispute. We look forward to continued efforts to normalise relations between both countries, and we stand ready to assist. Turning to Somalia, we condemn in the strongest terms the horrific attacks in Mogadishu on Friday. It's clear that al-Shabaab continues to pose a serious threat to the peace and stability of Somalia and the region. This resolution underlines our full support for the Somali authorities in their efforts to combat this threat. In this context, we welcome the progress to date on security reform. Further progress is now essential to implement the national security architecture and make full use of integrated regional Somali forces to deliver a successful transition to Somali-led security. Coordinated international engagement will remain key. We also look forward to further cooperation between the Somali authorities and the reconstituted panel of experts on the implementation of the arms embargo. Mr. President, I think the countries concerned and the region deserve to be congratulated on the important steps forward that they have taken that have made this resolution possible today. Not only is it a very important step for the countries in the region, I think it sends a helpful wider signal to the international community that if the right steps are taken, sanctions can be lifted. The United Kingdom has the pleasure to continue to offer its full support to the Somali authorities, the Djiboutian and Eritrean authorities, the Sanctions Committee and the panel of experts in their efforts to support peace and stability. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom and give the floor to the representative of Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me first welcome Ambassador Abubakar Osman of PR of Somalia, Ambassador Mohammed Wali of Djibouti, and Mr. Emmanuel George, Charge d'Affaires of Eritrea. Let me start by welcoming unreservedly the adoption of Resolution 2444. We greatly appreciate the United Kingdom for its efforts as penholder in facilitating the negotiation on the resolution, and all Council members for voting in favor of the resolution. We fully support the resolution drafted by UK, which we believe is balanced and a result of consensus made of the negotiation over the last couple of days. We commend the role played by Somalia and Eritrea Monitoring Group and the committee, which has done great work in supporting the peace and security in the Horn of Africa. Mr. President, the whole trajectory of future development in our sub-region has changed fundamentally in recent months. Countries of the region have opened a new chapter of normalizing relations, a relation which truly reflects the long-standing historical ties between our peoples. This has already had enormous implications for the work of the committee and the sanction regime as a whole. It also has great significance for regional and international peace and stability. We are adopting this resolution today at a time when a major and historical development is unfolding in the Horn of Africa. The breakthrough arising from the rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea is already producing unprecedented and far-reaching positive consequences and is significantly changing the political landscape of the Horn of Africa and beyond. It is highly appropriate for the Security Council to take this decisive judgment when countries of the region are turning a new page in their relations. Mr. President, the Horn of Africa has a tremendous potential for common development and prosperity, provided that there is durable peace and stability. The Council decision today will help to capitalize on the opportunities we are now creating to transform the region into a zone of peace and prosperity and usher a new era of friendship between all the countries of the region. It is with this conviction that my Prime Minister has formally submitted a request to the United Nations last July to lift the sanction imposed on Eritrea. Therefore, today we are very pleased that the Council responded positively by lifting the sanction on Eritrea. On our part, we are fully committed to forge ever closer political, economic, social, and security cooperation with all the people and government of the Horn of Africa. This will serve and advance the interest of our people. It will ensure regional peace, development, and cooperation. Lifting of the sanction regime on Eritrea doesn't, of course, mean that the region is free of challenges. We still face problems that require efforts and determination to resolve. We still need the help and serious support of the international community. But on our part, we are determined to accelerate efforts to create a region where peace, development, and democracy prevail in harmony. We are confident that the international community will stand in solidarity to support us as we continue to move forward to a greater peace, stability, and economic integration in the Horn of Africa. Mr. President, it is also encouraging to note how far Somalia has come in recent years. At the same time, the rebuilding and reconstruction of the country still requires sustained engagement and support. Somalia has indeed reached an important phase in consolidating its state institutions. But Al-Shabaab remains the greatest challenge capable of creating destruction in Somalia and beyond. The security situation remains volatile, and Al-Shabaab continues to present serious danger to the peace and security of Somalia and the whole region. The string of deadly bomb attacks last Friday claimed the lives of over 50 innocent civilians and injured many more. It reflected the continuous threat posed by the group. It underlined the importance of doing everything possible to minimize Al-Shabaab's acquisition of arms or funds and the necessity to control its activities. It is particularly important at this critical juncture not to divert attention from the current process as the government prepares for the very important transition toward this election in 2020. The Council must continue to provide the fullest possible assistance to sustain the government and the transition. We must avoid the risk of reversing the gains achieved so far, gains made with enormous sacrifice by the Somalis and others in the region. Finally, Mr. President, Ethiopia will continue to be closely involved, constructively, and in a principled manner in all efforts in settling outstanding issues in good faith. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Ethiopia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Sweden.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We welcome the adoption of the resolution before us this morning. The historic and significant developments in the Horn of Africa we have witnessed the past year, triggered by the Eritrean-Ethiopian reconciliation, have dramatically changed the dynamics in the region and opened a new chapter of peace and cooperation. The basis for the restrictive measures against Eritrea, adopted almost a decade ago, is no longer in place. This is why we supported this resolution. It is imperative that the Security Council continues to support the courageous decisions taken by the leaders in the region, as these developments will have far-reaching and positive consequences for the Greater Horn of Africa region and beyond. As the Secretary-General said in his address to the General Assembly, despite the chaos and confusion in our world, there are also winds of hope blowing around the globe. Mr. President, the developments in the Horn of Africa represents a unique opportunity that promises to bring not only stability to the region, but also allows its countries and peoples to reap the benefits of the political, economic, and social cooperation that will follow. It shows how regional cooperation can turn the page on war and conflict. There is still hard work ahead in order to secure the full potential of the peace dividends. We need to offer our full support in seizing the opportunities and addressing remaining concerns. We welcome in this regard the Secretary-General's recent decision to expand the mandate of the Special Envoy to Sudan and South Sudan to include the entire Horn of Africa. It will give the UN a better ability to support and facilitate further positive developments in terms of peace and security, human rights, stability, and ultimately development, economic growth, and welfare. Mr. President, turning to Somalia, this sanctions regime continues to play a critical role in supporting the international effort to defeat Al-Shabaab through averting the flow of illicit arms and preventing the group from raising funds, while at the same time allowing the important build-up of the Somalia National Forces, as Somalia is preparing to take greater charge of its own security. Our continued strong support to the Somali peace and state-building process will be crucial, and we must stay the course together with the Somali people in keeping up the momentum and build on what has already been achieved. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
The mic is not open for the President. I thank the representative of Sweden, and I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
First, we thank the delegation of the United Kingdom for drafting today's very important resolution. We also welcome representatives of Somalia, Eritrea, and Djibouti in this chamber. We would like to highlight that this year is marked by unprecedented, positive, and very welcome developments in the Horn of Africa. In the last few months, we have witnessed a historic rapprochement among countries of the region led by a great vision and determined political will of their leaders. Today we see the fruitful results of courageous choices made by the regional states to close an era of long protracted tensions, conflict and competition, and instead pave the way for a new era of peaceful and mutually beneficial cooperation. We join the international community in recognizing and highly praising the efforts of the new leadership of Ethiopia for initiating and promoting a constructive and forward-looking dynamism on the regional scale. This was aimed at advancing the nations of the region towards a long-awaited peaceful and prosperous future. The countries in the Horn of Africa have demonstrated a resolute commitment and capacity to find solutions for regional problems. Although we hail the fast progress, we are mindful of not only the challenges and impediments, but also the perils ahead in the creation of durable peace and prosperity in the region. It is important that the UN, all member states and international organizations meaningfully support these rapid and momentous changes that are currently unfolding. These undoubtedly have far-reaching implications for the security and prosperity of the broader region, and we must ensure that these gains are consolidated. In this regard, we welcome the decision of the Secretary General to expand the mandate of the Special Envoy for Sudan and South Sudan to cover the Horn of Africa region as well. Closer collaboration between the United Nations, the African Union and IGAD will allow to build on the recent strides in peace and security and enhance sub-regional strategies to address security and development issues. Diplomacy, mediation, confidence building and dialogue, together with development investments, are the sure means of resolving existing disputes between countries. We welcome the engagement between Djibouti and Eritrea and encourage them to engage in further efforts to resolve the remaining challenges in their bilateral relationship. Mr. President, with regard to Somalia, we strongly condemn the terrorist attack on November 9th in Mogadishu and express our deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the victims, as well as to the people and government of Somalia. These horrific acts of violence remind us of the fragility of the security situation in the country and the necessity to make every effort to preserve the hard-earned stability. Along with that, we acknowledge with deep satisfaction the achievements made by the federal government in its efforts to rebuild the conflict-torn nation. We commend and support the comprehensive reform agenda and development vision of Somalia's leadership. We would like to stress the importance of the sustained and coordinated support of the international community to the recovery and stabilization processes in Somalia, including through addressing the root causes of the crisis. Mr. President, Kazakhstan has added its voice today in support of the resolution due to its own resolve and conviction in the peace and prosperity of Africa. As the chair of the Sanctions Committee on Somalia and Eritrea, Kazakhstan was privileged to be a part of today's positive outcome of Security Council meeting, and particularly happy to contribute to peaceful process in the Horn of Africa. We strongly believe that the recent progress in the Horn of Africa would serve as an example for the rest of the conflicts in other parts of Africa and the world. Thank you.
Okay.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan. I now give the floor to the representative of Russia Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, we would like to congratulate Eritrea and the leadership with the lifting of the sanctions in the Security Council. We have long time said that the restrictions against this country are unrealistic. The proof of this is that over the years, no significant change was made by the sanctions in the region. The classification of the dispute between Djibouti and Eritrea as a threat to international peace and security after the changes in the Horn of Africa was outdated as well. We hope that the resolution adopted by the Council today will be a significant step forward in promoting good neighbourly relations in the region. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the Council has a debt to Ethiopia and Abiy Ahmed, whose brave actions has significantly led to the vote that was just conducted today. Of course, this resolution, as we say, will not just with a sweep of the hand deal with all of these issues. We trust that in particular it will be a stimulus to promote normalization of relations between Eritrea and Djibouti. At the same time, we believe that the settlement of all pending issues between the two countries is the remit of bilateral diplomacy, with the need, of course, if necessary, the parties can use the good offices of the UN and other international mechanisms provided for this. In this regard, we consider that the group of countries working together is something that is crucial here. And we regret the fact that the resolution talks about gender and sexually based violence as a separate criteria for the imposition of sanctions, despite the fact that this is different from the listing. We would like to remind you once again, issues pertaining to sanctions come under Chapter 7 of the Charter that talks about threats to international peace and security. A expanded interpretation of this means that the sanctions instruments will lose some of their effectiveness. We have already said regarding other countries' issues that such a step is undermining the work of the Security Council. Once again, we must say that this particular issue is not our remit. There is the Human Rights Council or CEDAW, and the division of power needs to be strictly upheld. Division of remits needs to be strictly upheld here. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation. I now give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United States welcomes Eritrea's rapprochement with its neighbors. We're encouraged by its stated commitment to re-engage in an effort to establish enduring peace and regional cooperation, and to open the door to its reintegration. This is a historic moment of great opportunity for the Horn of Africa, but there's much more to do, particularly to address questions regarding the disposition of missing Djiboutian troops and the final status of the Djibouti-Eritrea border. Mr. President, we believe the recent engagement between the two countries strongly suggests the political will and intent is strong enough to reach a solution with the support of the international community. We're satisfied that the Council has agreed on a resolution that pays particular attention to the importance of Eritrea and Djibouti following through on their commitments to resolve these matters, and continue to call on all parties to cooperate to reach a satisfactory outcome. The United States predicates its support for lifting UN sanctions against Eritrea on the current lack of evidence connecting Eritrea to al-Shabaab. We appreciate the Sanctions Committee and monitoring groups' efforts to carry out their mandates in this regard. Mr. President, we strongly support the renewal of the Sanctions Committee's mandate to focus on Somalia. There is no doubt that Somalia has made significant progress over the last decade, due in large part to the support of its regional partners and the international community as a whole. However, Somali capacity, including implementation of remaining arms restrictions and the ban on trade in Somali charcoal, remains limited due to security conditions, corruption, and uneven progress in governance. We're confident that the Somali panel of experts will remain diligent in faithfully fulfilling its mandate, especially as it relates to comprehensive investigations and reporting. Mr. President, the United States will continue to support Somalia in its efforts to stabilize the country for its people, including by ensuring the international community takes all appropriate measures to maintain the integrity of the sanctions regime. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States, and I'll give the floor to the representative of France.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, France takes note of the adoption of Resolution 2444 unanimously. Since the beginning, France has unfailingly supported the dynamic of a rapprochement in the Horn of Africa. This is a historic development, paving the way in an unprecedented fashion to bring stabilization and development in the region. France here would like to commend the courageous decision of the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Mr. Abiy Ahmed, without which this development would not have been possible. It is the Security Council's responsibility to assist these developments in the Horn of Africa inter alia by lifting sanctions on Eritrea. Nonetheless, we consider that the Security Council still has legitimate requirements vis-à-vis Eritrea. First and foremost, the Eritrean authorities need to cooperate with the Security Council. The panel of experts has not been able to go to Eritrea since 2011. And furthermore, Eritrea needs to give significant signs that it wishes to work with Djibouti to settle the border dispute between the two countries and to settle the question of Djibouti prisoners of war in line with the provisions of Resolution 2385. These are two non-resolved issues and recognised as such by the resolution that we've just adopted today. In this context, while France welcomes the meeting in Jeddah between the Djiboutian and Eritrean presidents in September, France is still expecting this meeting to lead to specific progress on the ground and to a commitment to work together. It is crucial for us as well that no country in the region should be left on the sidelines of this dynamic underway in the Horn of Africa. France welcomes the fact that with this resolution, the Security Council is undertaking to continue to regularly monitor the developments of the relationship between Eritrea and Djibouti in order to assist peace, stabilization, and reconciliation in the Horn of Africa. Of course, we are prepared to work in coordination with all of the stakeholders in the region to contribute to strengthening this dynamic in the region. Regarding Somalia, sir, France considers that the sanctions regime remains crucial in order to combat the illicit trafficking in arms and charcoal of Somalia. This fuels the Al-Shabaab terrorist group, which remains a significant threat to security in Somalia. Here I'd like to present France's condolences to the Somali authorities for the terrible terrorist attacks that struck Mogadishu on Friday the 9th of November. In this context, I would also like to remind you that the sanctions regime in Somalia mainly seeks to support the Somali federal authorities as they combat terrorism. The exemption procedures on the arms embargo provided for by the sanctions regime indeed enable the Somali federal authorities to get the equipment that they need to combat terrorist groups. This is with the support of their international partners. Therefore, it's on the interest of the Somali federal authorities to pursue effective cooperation with the panel of experts on Somalia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France, and I'll give the floor to the representative of Poland.
President, Poland welcomes the adoption of the resolution renewing the measures on Somalia for 1 year and lifting the sanctions regime on Eritrea. We would like to thank UK for constructive and efficient conduct of the negotiations on the document. We acknowledge the importance of sanctions regime in case of Somalia, where the federal government is in the process of taking over full responsibility for country's security, and Al-Shabaab continues to pose serious threat to Somali stability. We hope that the renewed measures will help to limit Al-Shabaab's access to arms and financing and strengthen the government's state-building efforts. Mr. President, let me reiterate what we have stated on numerous occasions over the recent months. Poland welcomes the developments in the Horn of Africa, especially the rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea and positive dynamics between Eritrea and Djibouti. We believe that sanctions are not a punishment, but a policy tool, and that they should be subject to regular review and adjustment to realities on the ground. In line with this approach, we have supporting the lifting of the sanctions regime on Eritrea. We hope that recent encouraging events will allow for achieving durable peace across the region. At the same time, we believe that Security Council should closely follow the normalization between Eritrea and Djibouti and stand ready to support the two countries' effort to peacefully resolve their differences. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Poland. I now give the floor to the representative of the Netherlands.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, let me welcome our colleagues from Djibouti, Somalia and Eritrea to this Council. Mr. President, the Kingdom of the Netherlands has a long-standing and strong commitment to peace and development in the Horn of Africa. And that's why we voted in favor of this resolution today, and we see our decision as a tribute to the positive developments that have taken place in the region. The peace agreement between Ethiopia and Eritrea represents a historic step. It paves the way for improved bilateral relations and for stronger regional peace and stability. We welcome the decision by Eritrea to start engaging with the international community and to work towards consolidation of the peace agreement. These are important steps, and we encourage Eritrea to build on this momentum to give an impulse to domestic governance reforms. This includes reforms on the economy, the national service, democratization, and human rights. In particular, we call on Eritrea to better cooperate with international mechanisms, in particular those related to human rights. Mr. President, the positive developments in the Horn of Africa do not relieve this Council from its responsibility to monitor progress closely. In particular, we underline the need for concrete steps in the normalization of relations between Eritrea and Djibouti. And that is why we welcome the decision by this Council to remain seized of this matter by asking for regular reporting on this important issue. We also emphasize that other decisions and demands made by this Council towards Eritrea remain valid. And this includes the decision by this Council that Eritrea shall cease using illicit means to collect taxes outside of Eritrea, as stated in Resolution 2023. Mr. President, finally, we welcome the renewal of the Somalia sanction measures as essential support to the Somali government in its efforts to deliver stability and security in Somalia. We welcome in particular the addition of a standalone sanctions criterion for sexual and gender-based violence. Those who commit these heinous acts should know that this Council today shows its commitment to respond to these practices. In conclusion, Mr. President, as others have done, we condemn in the strongest terms the horrific terrorist attacks in Mogadishu last Friday. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Netherlands. I now give the floor to the representative of Equatorial Guinea.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, President. First of all, we'd like to thank the United Kingdom for drafting this resolution. And we also welcome the representatives of Djibouti, Eritrea, and Somalia. The delegation of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea voted in favor of Resolution 2444 as a result of the new dynamic in the Horn of Africa, with the exception of the continued threats and potential atrocities led by the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab, which the resolution bears in mind. My delegation has been closely following events in the Horn of Africa since the beginning of the current 6-month period. We have seen the beginning of a new reality in relations between countries in the region. Ethiopia and Eritrea have shown that reconciliation is possible, and it is much more appropriate than confrontation between neighboring countries. They have reached significant agreements that have resolved long-standing problems between their states, thus diffusing one of the most worrisome latent conflicts in Africa. Somalia and Eritrea have re-established diplomatic ties after a long period of rupture, which shows a very significant step forward in resolving their differences. They have opened a phase of normalization of relations between Djibouti and Eritrea has also been opened when the foreign affairs ministers of Ethiopia, Somalia, and Eritrea traveled to Djibouti. This commitment was then subsequently confirmed with the meeting of the presidents of Eritrea and Djibouti in Saudi Arabia in September. We understand that the region has to be able to optimize the undeniable potential it has, and therefore it is important that countries of the region join together efforts to avoid the common threats. And we're particularly referring to Al-Shabaab in that context. We believe that pending issues such as the issues of the prisoners and the borders can be dealt with in the good spirit of this resolution. We're referring to Eritrea and Djibouti. In conclusion, President, peaceful, brotherly coexistence between states is a primordial element which must prevail in the international political scenario, and it is therefore crucial to guarantee sound regional coexistence that all countries are called upon to foster so as to guarantee the development of states. This is the new dynamic that, under the leadership of Ethiopia, the countries of the Horn of Africa have decided to undertake. And that is the spirit that this resolution must maintain, and that is why we have adopted it. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Equatorial Guinea, and now give the floor to the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia.
Thank you very much, President. My delegation would like to express our gratitude for the work undertaken by the United Kingdom in contributing to the drafting of the resolution that we have just adopted unanimously. And we also welcome the distinguished representatives of Djibouti, Eritrea and Somalia in this very important session of the Security Council. Bolivia has closely followed the development of events in the Horn of Africa, and we reiterate our satisfaction as a result of the new approach of understanding between countries of the sub-region. There has been a new phase of openness and friendship that has been opened, and we are sure that this will promote cooperation in important areas such as the economy, social and cultural factors, and of course security above all. In this understanding, we believe that the progress made to date in the region must be reflected through the commitment and confidence building between states. We also believe that the important events that are being undertaken in the Horn of Africa highlight the importance of leadership and the importance of policy prevailing and the importance of dialogue and support from the international community. My delegation has reiterated on many prior occasions that sanctions are not an end in themselves. The United Nations Charter states that sanctions must be assessed as the situation on the ground evolves. In this specific case, there is therefore a need to lift sanctions, and that has been essential. President, on the situation in Somalia, my delegation also categorically condemns the recent terrorist attack that took place in Mogadishu. We express our concern about the risk of the continued presence of al-Shabaab in Somalia and in the sub-region, as well as the threat posed by the presence of factions of Daesh, as well as the asymmetric attacks. They show that the international community and the Security Council must continue to provide support to the process for peace and reconciliation, which belongs to the Somali people ultimately. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia. I give the floor to the representative of Peru.
Thank you, President. We are satisfied to see the unanimous adoption of the resolution lifting sanctions on Eritrea. And this bears witness to the positive progress towards dialogue and the general developments in the entire Horn of Africa. We wish to underscore, however, that it is important to resolve the pending issues, such as the disappeared soldiers and the borders between Djibouti and Eritrea. The role of Ethiopia in all of these positive developments in the region must be highlighted and recognized by this Council. There are still major challenges to be overcome, such as terrorism of al-Shabaab in Somalia and the need to make progress swiftly in the development of the region and improving living standards for populations. It was very important for the Council and the international community generally to recognize and adopt decisions that encourage the region to continue in this path towards peace, reconciliation and development. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Peru, and now give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
Thank you, Mr. President. First and foremost, we would like to express our sincere condolences to the brotherly nation of Somalia following the terrorist attacks that took place on Friday in Mogadishu. Mr. President, the countries in the Horn of Africa have seen particularly positive political developments over recent times. This enabled the governments and people of this region to move forward and to turn a page in their history in order to today have more hopes in seeing the development and security that the region aspires to. We welcome Ethiopia and Eritrea and Somalia and Djibouti's efforts. We have seen historic progress here in the region, crowned with success thanks to the signature of the peace agreement in Jeddah. We commend the adoption of today's resolution, a resolution for which we voted in favour. This has enabled the region to move forward using peaceful means, thanks to reconciliation between the countries of the region. All of this will bring more peace. We hope to achieve a solution that is in the interests of all the people in the region and that takes into consideration the interests of the different governments. This is why we supported the decision of the Security Council to lift sanctions against Eritrea. This means that more stability can be built in the region, in particular vis-à-vis some issues that are still pending between Eritrea and Djibouti. We do hope that more significant progress will be made as we look forward to the report of the Secretary General on this region that is planned for the 15th of February 2019. Our joint efforts must enable Somalia to move on from the difficult period that the country is experiencing, in particular the threat posed by al-Shabaab. Sanctions are an important series of measures. It is a message that we are sending to the international community. Sanctions are not just there ad infinitum. They are not punitive measures that we inflict on some countries. When there are positive developments, when the very reasons for which the sanctions were imposed disappear, we can indeed lift the sanctions when there is no need for them any longer. We would like to thank the UK for its constructive work during recent negotiations. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Kuwait. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of China.
First of all, China expresses its condemnation of the terrorist attack that occurred last Friday. And we express our condolences and sympathy over the death and casualties resulting from the attack. Just now, the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2444, lifting the sanctions on Eritrea and extending the mandate of the panel of experts of the Somali Sanctions Committee. The past few months witnessed positive changes in the situation in the Horn of Africa and continued improvement of relations between the countries of the region. The Council's lifting of sanctions on Eritrea is conducive to the regional countries' efforts for peace and development and to maintaining the current positive development momentum of the region. China welcomes this. Meanwhile, the Horn of Africa still faces challenges. The Security Council and the international community should continue to provide constructive assistance in light of the needs of the countries in the region. We hope that the countries concerned in the region will actively seize the current favorable opportunity, ramp up dialogue and consultation, and meet each other halfway to properly solve the issues. It is hoped that the international community will continue to help the Somali government focus on the threat of al-Shabaab and advance the process of national reconciliation of Somalia. China is ready to continue to work with the international community in playing a constructive role in the attainment of peace, stability and development in the countries in the Horn of Africa. I resume my function as President of the Council, and I'll give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Good morning, Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, allow me to congratulate you, Mr. President, on your presiding over the Security Council for this month. We are confident in your leadership, and we wish you every success in fulfilling your duties. Also, I would like to commend your predecessor, the Permanent Representative of Bolivia, for his excellent leadership in guiding the work of the Council last month. Mr. President, we warmly congratulate the people of Eritrea for withstanding the hardship endured under the sanction measures. We welcome the lifting of the sanctions of Eritrea. At the same time, we want to acknowledge the effort spearheaded by President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, His Excellence, relating to the normalization of relationship between Eritrea and Djibouti. And we hope that the two governments will engage in good faith to settle all outstanding issues in accordance with international law. Mr. President, 46 years ago, my country, Somalia, and its leadership was uncompromising and hardly working for sustainable peace, particularly in Africa. It successfully promoted and ensured the peace process negotiations during the crisis between Tanzania and Uganda. Having said that, the federal government of Somalia looks forward to the beginning of the new chapter of cooperation and partnership with all the countries in the Horn of Africa. And we will continue together to strengthen our closer ties forged between the people of the region. Mr. President, the federal government of Somalia goes on record in seeking to lift the sanctions imposed on Somalia since 1992. In that regard, I would like to raise the following points. 1. The outdated sanctions on Somalia is one of the longest United Nations sanction regime with the widest mandate. Not only the sanction violate the Somalis' unity, it also not align with federal government's policy to build capable Somali National Army. For example, paragraph 11A and paragraph 10C of the sanction regime allow countries to provide or donate weapons to Somali regional authorities without our notification, approval, or proper weapons ammunition management of the end users. Despite our belief that sanctions are flawed in principle, it continues to be imposed on Somalia without proper assessment of their effectiveness as a mean to reach Security Council's desired end goal. We once again stress the importance of having a clearly defined benchmarks to the full lifting of the sanctions on Somalia. If there are no specific steps that are clearly stated and verifiably, the incentive to comply with the UN Security Council demands as well as the effectiveness or success of the sanction regime will diminish drastically. Number 2, the terrorist groups like Al-Shabaab and ISIL remain a serious threat to Somalia's peace and stability. It has been a year since we have witnessed one of the largest and the deadliest attack on October 14, last year, 2017, on Somalia. Yet, with sadness, once again, Somali people are receiving the message of condolences and sympathy from our friends and partners for the deadly attack on Mogadishu on the 9th of November. That claimed the lives of over 50 and injured more than 100. We believe that the Security Council sanctions should target the terrorist groups like Al-Shabaab, who continue to receive weapons and resources from abroad. The Somali-Eritrea Monitoring Group concluded that the October 14 attack, and I quote, while there is no evidence to suggest that the IEDs contained homemade explosives, constructing a 1,200 kilogram bomb by traditional explosives remnants of war harvested will entail a major logistical operations. For example, Al-Shabaab will have had to harvest approximately 6,000 60-millimeter mortars or 190 TM57 anti-tank mines. Terrorist groups like Al-Shabaab and ISIL do not go through the official import channels. As a result, our fight against terrorism becomes more challenging with a large flow of weapons and resources into Somalia. Terrorist groups in Somalia have made use of the existing trade network and short distance across the Gulf of Aden to Somalia. The impact of the war in Yemen is particularly acute for Somalia, since we lack the capacity of securing remote areas along our coastal line and borders. The flows of illegal weapons and resources must be curbed by the targeting and destroying the network that provides them. We request from our partners to help us improve our capacity in air surveillance, borders, customs, and law enforcement to control land borders and other access points like the sea and the air. It's the responsibility of the federal government of Somalia to monitor and safeguard its borders. Number 3, the build-up of the military base in Berbera continue to be clear defiance of the UN Security Council's resolutions, and as well as Somalia's unity and sovereignty and territorial integrity. The SEMG has reported for the second year in a row that the establishment of the military base in Berbera constitute a clear violation of arms embargo on Somalia. However, the construction of foreign base and transfer of military equipment is still ongoing, with a reported completion date set in 2019. We ask the esteemed members of the Council, what is the purpose of the sanction if the violations by member state are not addressed by the Security Council? What is the significance of the Security Council resolution if Somalia's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity is continuously violated in front of our eyes? Over a quarter century, we have seen a quite number of Security Council issues statements that it's time to supplement them with appropriate actions derived from the Security Council's primary responsibility and the UN Charter for the maintenance of international peace and security. Number 4, subject matter expertise and evidence-based reporting is the best practice to be used in the monitoring of UN arms embargo. However, there seems to be little consideration given to such practice today. Throughout the mandate of the monitoring group, unlike most of the UN panel of experts on sanctions, they have been based away of Somalia in Nairobi, Kenya. As a result, the group devotes only 20% of their time in Somalia to monitor, analyze, investigate events in Somalia. Although the number of panel of experts of Somalia is one of the largest UN sanction regimes, the quality of their report remains mixed due to their remote location as well as the questionable level of the technical and regional expertise. And yet, the monitoring group identified those working for reform as the primary target of their investigation. False accusations, poorly evidenced claims, gossip, and political grievances were used to undermine our efforts. The federal government of Somalia will not tolerate individuals and Somali institutions and organizations being named in the report of such no evidence or little evidence. The reputation and the work of many companies and individuals who are working to invest and rebuild Somalia have been irresponsibly damaged and brought into the international question based on rumors and speculations. In that regard, we welcome the name change of the panel of experts, and we recommend their relocation to better perform their mandate tasks. Moreover, we recommend choosing from a pool of experts with high level of technical and regional expertise to undertake future investigations in Somalia. To conclude, Mr. President, we thank the Security Council for your continued support on Somalia's unity and progress. Terrorism is not only a Somali fight, it's a regional fight, it's also global. That we are all united in countering its ever-changing threats. We encourage the Council to look beyond the borders of Somalia and support us in our regional approach to the threats we are facing. This is the only way that we will able us to defeat the terrorism comprehensively and build a lasting peace in Somalia and across the world. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia, and I'll give the floor to the representative of Djibouti.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, Djibouti wishes to express its profound gratitude to the members of the Council for this opportunity to offer Djibouti's views on the unresolved border dispute with Eritrea and the remaining 13 prisoners of war still unaccounted for. It further wishes to thank Mr. Karait Umarov, chair of the Sanctions Committee, and lauds his effort, continued faith, and perseverance in the execution of his mandate. We, of course, commend Her Excellency Ambassador Karen Pierce of the United Kingdom and her team for all their efforts in the process leading to the drafting of the resolution just adopted today. Most importantly, Djibouti expresses its gratitude to the members of the Council for the unanimous support to its legitimate security concerns, aspirations, and goals. First, on Somalia, Djibouti is heartened by the progress made in the implementation of the political roadmap, the national security architecture, and the transition plan, and supports the call for acceleration of these efforts. Djibouti welcomes the adoption of Security Council Resolution 2431, extending the mandate of AMISOM until May 2019. AMISOM's continued enabling role and support is vital in the implementation of the transition plan and strengthening of the capacities of the Somali security forces. However, it notes with utmost concern that Al-Shabaab remains a threat to peace and security in Somalia, as evidenced by the latest terrorist attack in Mogadishu, in which dozens of innocent women, children, and men were killed or injured. It routinely commits brazen terrorist attacks at home and abroad and executes targeted political assassinations. It is therefore urgent to accelerate efforts to implement the national security architecture, and we should collectively mount in earnest a meaningful effort to degrade and defeat Al-Shabaab. Djibouti remains committed to peace in Somalia and will continue to contribute in any way it can. In this regard, I wish to inform the distinguished members of the Security Council that the African Union Peace and Security Council, currently chaired by Djibouti, will be conducting a field visit in Somalia on the 27th and 28th of November. The Council will have an opportunity to gather first-hand information and conduct an in-depth analysis of the security situation in the country, and therefore would be in a position to articulate practical, action-oriented recommendations on the way forward. On Eritrea, Djibouti welcomes the lifting of arms embargoes, travel bans, asset freezes, and targeted sanctions on Eritrea. Djibouti's paramount interest, as Council is aware, is to obtain a peaceful, permanent resolution of all boundary and territorial differences in accordance with international law. Those differences arose in 2008, led to an armed conflict that year, have remained unresolved, and constitute a threat to Djibouti itself and to international peace and security. Direct negotiations and mediation by third parties have been attempted, but failed to make significant progress towards a settlement. Djibouti has called upon the Council, with the assistance of the Secretary General, to facilitate an agreement of the parties to voluntarily submit their boundary and territorial differences for full and final settlement by an impartial third party, such as an international arbitral tribunal or the International Court of Justice, in accordance with Article 33 of the Charter. What Djibouti seeks are impartial, forward-looking measures that assist the parties in settling their prolonged conflict by recommending a specific means of settlement from among those identified in Article 33 and establishing a mechanism leading to agreement on those means. In this regard, Djibouti reiterates its gratitude to the members of the Council for the unanimous support to the resolution just adopted. It underlines the importance of continuing efforts towards the normalization of relations between Eritrea and Djibouti for regional peace, stability, and reconciliation, the settlement of disputes in a peaceful manner consistent with international law, and the support in the resolution of these matters in good faith. As noted in paragraph 3, the President of Djibouti and the President of Eritrea met in Jeddah on September 17, 2018, and agreed to continue efforts towards the normalization of relations between the two countries. Djibouti is committed to deepening dialogue and negotiating in good faith with Eritrea until an amicable resolution is achieved on all outstanding issues. But continued stalemate is not an option. We need to expedite the process. We welcome, in this regard, paragraph 57 of the resolution and underscores the importance of the Council's continued engagement, guidance, and oversight. Djibouti is committed to working with Eritrea until the parties reach a full and final agreement on the international land boundary, the sovereignty over Dumera Island, the maritime boundary, and the status of the prisoners of war. On the prisoners of war, 13 remaining prisoners are unaccounted for, are still in Eritrean custody. As we stated before in this chamber, the release of our remaining prisoners of war from the cruelties of their captivity has been uppermost in our thoughts. We will engage meaningfully with Eritrea to clarify the fate of the remaining prisoners of war and work tirelessly to ensure their prompt repatriation. We express hope that after 9 years of stonewalling about them, Eritrea is at last willing to comply with UN Security Council decisions and will engage in good faith on the issue of the Djiboutian combatants missing in action as called for in para 6 of Resolution 2444. The government of Djibouti has authorized the High Commissioner for Refugees to review all of the individual histories of Eritrean prisoners of war held in Djibouti since the clashes of 2008 and to make recommendations with respect to their status and need for protection. Finally, Djibouti welcomes the reporting mechanism as provided for in paragraph 57. We are looking forward to the report of the Secretary General to be presented to the Council no later than 15 February 2019. Indeed, progress can be made, and it can be made swiftly if there is commitment to the process by the disputing states. Monsieur le Président, en conclusion, permettez-moi.
President, in conclusion, allow me to reaffirm the willingness of Djibouti to contribute to strengthening links of good neighborliness between countries of the region. We need to do our utmost to ensure that the current dynamic, a wind of peace blowing in the Horn of Africa, is not a cliche or a slogan, but rather a reality. Peace in the region must be full, it must be inclusive, it must lead to a transformative force, which will, we hope, allow countries in the sub-region to liberate their economic potential for the benefits of their populations. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Djibouti for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Eritrea.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council. I wish to congratulate China on the assumption of the presidency of the Council for the month of November. For the past 9 years, the delegation of Eritrea has been addressing this chamber, seeking an end of the unwarranted punitive measures imposed on the people of Eritrea. The long overdue call for justice is finally answered with unanimous decision of the Council. The lifting of the sanction will mark an end of a difficult period for Eritrea and the region. The actions and inactions of the Council have had harmful consequences to the people of Eritrea and the Horn of Africa. It entailed 2 decades of missed opportunity for peace and socio-economic progress. On this historic day, I'm humbled to congratulate the people of Eritrea, who have endured persistent external pressures that aim to taint their heroic history and erase their vision for durable peace and economic progress in the Horn of Africa. Eritreans will not look backwards and are not resentful. While mindful of the historical lessons of the past 2 decades, they are determined to create a peaceful and prosperous nation that is worthy of the sacrifice made for over 7 decades to build a harmonious, peaceful, and confident country. Mr. President, Eritreans are extremely joyous to have witnessed the recent positive regional developments. Eritrea as a nation is committed to work with all its neighbors, including Djibouti, to consolidate the gains made since this historic rapprochement between Eritrea and Ethiopia, the peace agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia, and the tripartite agreement between Somalia, Eritrea, and Ethiopia, which marks the beginning of a new dawn. Eritrea would like to seize this opportunity to thank the courageous position taken by Ethiopia and Somalia who have called for the immediate lifting of this sanction. While proud of the region's capability to resolve intransigent conflicts at an unprecedented speed, we are not complacent. Eritrea recognizes that a more difficult and complex task is waiting ahead. It is determined to redouble its own efforts and work closely with its neighbors to build a region at peace with itself. A region that befits the desires and aspirations of every woman, man, and child for a dignified life. Eritrea welcomes the good wishes, the encouragement, and the willingness of the international community to show support for this new era. However, more than the good intentions, the region needs an understanding and policy space to chart its own future based on shared history, culture, and interests of the people of the region. Let me conclude, Mr. President, by thanking all those who have advocated and supported for the lifting of the sanction. I would also like to thank Kazakhstan as chair and UK as pen holder for the constructive engagement they had with my delegation. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Eritrea for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.